got better at creating these previews, I would add in these visual instruction plans. So sort of like a Lego instruction for activities that we were going to do. So for me, I teach ESL students or ELLs. So I would make things super basic. It would be, okay, we're going to do activity A. And then there are 5 steps to that activity. Step 1 is a 1-word instruction with a visual aid. So it would be think, and it'd be an icon of someone thinking. Second would be listen and repeat. It would have a parrot hearing something and speaking it back. So it was these very, very simple and like easily understood instruction plans that they would preview before class. So again, it just sort of like reduces their effective filter to getting into the class, because, all right, maybe they didn't understand the visual instruction plan perfectly, but they understood a part of it. So now they've got a little bit more confidence going into the class, right? So we're building comprehension and then building competence all before class. So if I can give them that little preview, then when they're in class in that virtual setting, when the visual instruction plan pops up again, I've seen that before. This is not unfamiliar. There's a sense of comfort with it. Like, oh, okay, I might ask about that visual instruction plan. What animal is repeating the word? Oh, that's a parrot. Okay, I saw that before. What color is it? Oh, it's red and green and yellow. So they already have this background knowledge from the visual instruction plan that they can sort of more gently slide into the class setting and have an understanding of what's going to happen, but a familiarity. I feel like, in my experience, a lot of teachers feel like, they have to gauge their success on the quantity that they teach, the number of textbook pages they cover, or units that they cover, or lessons that they have presented.
And often they're under pressure to do a certain pace too.
Yeah, and that, I think, is, in this setting right now, it's not just detrimental to the students, it's unfair to teachers, because you can't teach to mastery in this setting with the amount of information that they're expected to cover. And now I have a lot of autonomy because it's my school. It's like it's my name on it. So I only teach to mastery. So of course I'm coming from the public system for a long time. So I'm very sympathetic to teachers who have that kind of like axe swinging over their head, like this textbook needs to be covered. It's part of the curriculum, it's mandated, so I totally understand that. And to make those sort of visual instruction plans or those sneak preview videos, it is time intensive. But it's time intensive when you're in a low stress environment. When I'm sitting at home in the evening and I'm on the couch with a cup of coffee and I'm doing my visual instruction plans, yeah, I don't want to be doing it at night. No teacher wants to be taking that stuff home, but it's a lot better than having students who aren't understanding what's going on in class. That's a real high stress environment where my extra effort is going to give me very little reward. However, the night before, when I make a visual instruction plan and I can sort of troubleshoot what might happen, even in a virtual class, the problems that might occur based on my instruction, I can go back and add things and tweak the visual instruction plans in a more calm setting when I'm by myself. Giving poor instruction in a classroom or a virtual setting, it's one of the highest stress points that a teacher has, right? teacher, I didn't understand it, or there are blank faces, or you have to explain the instructions a second and third and fourth time. So not only are you having a friction point with students who don't get it because they're feeling incompetent, but the students who do get it are held back. You know, you can't like release them to go work on the activity because you got to make sure everybody's got it before they start. So I feel like most teachers worry more about like lesson planning more than they do about their teacher talk. And in a virtual setting, I think the teacher talk is far more important than the actual step-by-step processing. For me, I would rather see teachers do like one activity per class than plan for 3 and then still only do 1. You know, plan one activity and then spend the rest of your lesson planning time on the teacher talk and your instructional language and the comprehension check questions that will ensure that students know what to do. And then, hey, at least every lesson, you'll have one successful activity. You don't want to like lower your expectations. I mean, of course, you want to have some supplemental activities ready, but I think the main focus of teachers' time in this sort of virtual setting should be on managing their teacher talk, their instructional language, and then sort of troubleshooting possible slip points where students might not catch what they wanted them to catch. You know, sort of thinking of the hypotheticals of, all right, well, if we get to step 3, who's going to get lost there? And like, how do I redirect them? What sort of visual instruction plan can I share to get them back on task? Because in the last 6 months or so, 7 months that I've been doing online courses, that's been the thing that's brought me the most satisfaction, is like students understanding what to do and then doing it. The first like month, I said, was really tough because I wasn't doing that correctly. I failed sort of miserably. I went into this new setting and I sort of forgot the old rules of my classroom that worked. It's like, well, this is a new setting, so I got to do things differently. It's like, oh no, I'm not reinventing the wheel. You know, I'm just upgrading from, you know, a hubcap to, you know, a rim. It's really like, it's basically just shiny new technology, but it's the same premise. I've got to give like very good, clear instruction, simplified language, you know, step my instruction, have an anchor chart on screen that students can follow along with, and I can refer them back to simply. So after the first month of failure, I went back and started doing that again. That gave me a lot of success.
That's an amazing breakdown, and I don't know, I feel like you should share it more widely. I feel like there's lots of people that would benefit from the way you talk about it there and the experience you bring to bear. I have a bunch of follow-up questions. I guess one, just for context setting, what's the size of the school? How many students are there? How many classes are you teaching? And how much time are you spending with the kids, and how old are they? Just that kind of stuff.
Sure. So right now, okay,
I guess it's like, what does the daily schedule look like for you is kind of the question.
So in the morning, I have my elementary classes. So I teach from 1st grade all the way up to 6th grade. Yeah, 1st to 6th. I teach them, they're blocked in like ability classes. So I have I don't know if you're familiar with like language scales, but I have my pre-A1 and A1, which is like very basic learners together. Then I have my high beginners and then my low intermediate. So it's just like a scale of ability. Right now, I have morning classes that are between 24 and 30. And
Pretty
then,
big, yeah.
yeah, I have like really big ones in the morning. Then in the afternoon, they breaks down into, I have a class between 3 and 6. So in the afternoon, my classes are super small. They're like more like a language lab. And so I start teaching at 9, and then I go to 12. Then I have like a 2-hour lunch block. Then I go from 2:30 to 5. So I've got like a morning, intensive morning, and then break, then another chunk. I meet students in 2 different timetables. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I meet them an hour a day for those 3 days a week. And then Tuesday and Thursday, we meet for 90-minute blocks. So every student meets the same number of minutes, just different durations based on the frequency during the week. So Tuesday and Thursday are longer classes. Monday, Wednesday, Friday are a little bit shorter.
And then, yeah, keep going.
The ages, like I said, they're blocked between like first and second, or second and third, or third and fourth. It never goes more than a 1 grade gap. It's just my kind of school policy. We want to have developmentally similar students and language ability similar students combined together. So we never go more than a 1-year spread in a class. That's just sort of for relationship building and keeping students in what we feel is like a comfortable setting.
Gotcha. And then why the large classes and the labs? What different purpose do those two serve?
The first one is a public school setting.
Okay.
So I still have that relationship with the school. So I still teach there in the mornings. So that's like my main job. I don't know. I consider both of these like my main job. So the public school setting, that is a core class in Korean public schools. They take English as a foreign language in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th grades.
Okay.
So they meet me 2 times a week or 3 times a week. And then after school, that is my semi-private business. It's like what I do as a language lab for students in my neighborhood. So the students like that I have here, some of them were students who graduated out of the elementary school. I teach them in the nighttime, but they're 2 sort of like separate entities. One is my private school, and then one is the public school. So the public school has a regular homeroom class setting, and then the private school is just smaller classrooms, sort of like conversational English. And then the public school is just, we follow a textbook curriculum.
Interesting. So those are probably feel really different for you and for the students.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
So like the public school is, it's like in the States, they're blocked by age and location. So you get a class of 3rd graders, and there's 24 of them, half boys, half girls. But because I teach a second language, over here in most of Asia, English as a second language is a pretty big market. So some students have gone to English language kindergarten. So by the time they get to me at the public school, they could have, like a conversation you might have with, like a 6-year-old niece or nephew, or, your own kids, and, you just have a little back and forth conversation. And then there are some who come to me and it is absolute zero, where you're like, okay, this is your second language, and this is your introduction to the second language. So that sort of ability spread is what really caused me to narrow down my instructional language and make things super clear, super easy to understand. So my whole class talk is very simple. It's very easy to understand. You know, it's chunked correctly. But that sort of whole class talk, it applies really to a content classroom back home too, because similarly, you're having a widespread inability. You might have students who have really good classroom mechanics. You know, they know how to follow along, they're attentive, they got their notebook ready and their pen ready, they come to class on time. Then there'll be others who are not so mechanically inclined when it comes to classroom behavior. You know, they require a little bit more of, like, I try to make my instructions like IKEA instructions or Lego instructions, where it's like, okay, this is piece A, then piece A moves here and piece B comes on. You know, I think that sort of, it's not dumbed down because you're still giving the, you know, the oral instruction, but your visual instruction, your written instruction should be simplified for your lowest ability student. You know, your mid to high range students, they can go off and get running on their own, but everybody should start at the same base of instruction, in my opinion. So like in a virtual setting, when you have that sort of background knowledge that I do, that, okay, these students, they don't know anything. So if I want them to know it, I've got to say it. Now it's weird, like a public school teacher back home, I'm only assuming because I haven't been back in a while, but they might not ask for like a pencil check, you know, which is strange because it's a classroom mechanic. For me, it's also classroom language. So it's really good to practice that with my students, but it's also important for kids back home. My pencil isn't ready. So now while the teacher's giving their instruction, I'm going to get my pencil and I missed step one. So it's these sort of like checkpoints or sort of milestone language that teachers have to incorporate into their teacher talk that they're not used to it in a classroom setting. In a classroom, you can look and see everybody's got their book, everybody has a pencil ready. It's these sort of simple things you don't even think to ask, but in a virtual setting, you go, okay, show me that your pens are ready. You know, hold up your book so that I know you have it. If you don't want to turn on your camera, type in the chat, I am ready, or I have my book. You know, it's these simple sort of checklists that teachers can incorporate to the beginning of their class as a pre-start, a recheck before an activity goes on, or as a sort of end of class wrap up. And they have this sort of checklist that they can go through. And it's not just a way to communicate with students, but to ensure that everybody's on board before you start giving your most important instructions. So for me, I say, all right, show me your book, show me your pencil. When I see that, now I go, okay, I've got everyone's attention. You know, I can't really do a call and response in a virtual class. You know, that echo and the feedback is terrible, but I can do like a sort of hand gesture or a chat check-in where students raise their virtual hand or students show me something visually. I get a quick check of it, then I can move on. I think having a sort of like a roadmap for pre-activity, activity, and like post-activity teacher talk would be really, really useful for somebody who's either new to teaching or new to, like all of us are, new to virtual teaching, or just wants to improve their fluidity, like to have something to follow that ensures you're checking all the boxes, that you're not forgetting anything. Because unless you write it down the first time, your memory is going to fail you. And like, you're going to say, oh, that's a good idea. Then you get in the class, you start talking, you get nervous, you forget something, and you want to go back to it. Having it right in front of you on a list, and you say, all right, show me your pens, show me your pencils. All right, great. We're going to go to step one. It's sort of something as a foreign language teacher, I had to train myself really hard to do because it's not natural for us. It's not, doesn't come in the flow of a normal teacher talk to say, okay, everyone, stop. Let's regroup. Let's go back to the beginning and do this very basic gesture or very basic like signaling that you're ready. We feel uncomfortable or it's weird, but after you do it once or twice and you get it into the routine of your teacher talk, it improves the student retention, and then it reduces the amount of times you have to go back and re-explain things. And in a virtual setting, for me, that's a real stress reducer. Not having to re-explain things again and again.
And I would imagine that in addition to preventing the kind of like lost sheep kind of thing that can happen for some students if they miss a step or whatever, you're also like, everybody has something that they can do physical, even like a small thing, and you can see everyone else is doing it, so you kind of know that you're together as a group. There's this kind of sense of community there almost being built.
Certainly, the physical check-in is important. And I know for me, as I'm a language teacher, I have to have cameras on. And I'm in the school, so I can say, if you don't want to do it, don't join our school. I have that flexibility. But, having some sort of, personalized check-in, like a whistle or a ding or whatever your personal relationship with students calls for, that could be the way that everybody brings a little more energy to the class too. It's like, all right, I'm ready, ding dong bang, and you rap on the desk, or you give a whistle, or you do a kazoo. Whatever it is that makes you feel like you're going to be able to bring some levity and some novelty, it can also work for that too. You have some flair in your class, because
I love this.
It can be a little bit like little energy intensive when a teacher is only talking and they're getting no response. That simple thing of showing and like being engaged really reaffirms that people are paying attention too.
Yeah, and it doesn't disrupt, like you say, the way like everyone talking would disrupt, but it's like a kind of path. Yeah, that's great. I wonder, in terms of the students, either in the big classes or later when you do the smaller ones, do they have anybody there at home with them? Are there often parents around? Or are they often on their own? Or is it kind of a mix? How does that work out? And how important is it?
It runs from, like you said, people over the shoulder. Sometimes I have like a mom sitting down or a father like right next to them.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're coming in and they're joining the chat late, or they're having audio problems, or the video's blurred and there's no one there to help them. So it does go all the way across the spectrum. Mostly at this point, my students are, I wouldn't say digital natives, but they are competent. They're able to like log in, they're able to get set up and be pretty self-sufficient.
Even the little ones? So like, you said you
Yeah,
go all the way down to kindergarten, right?
first
Right?
grade, yeah. First grade, they are, they're the ones, you see the camera knock over from time to time, or, you hear things in the background, like a vacuum cleaner going on. So they don't have as much digital etiquette yet. But it's a work in progress. There are some battles that I choose to fight, and then others that I just can't fight because there are too many. So that's like, because I have some parents who are really eager to help and who are very helpful, some who are eager to help but are like detrimental. Then I get some who are absentee, and that's a good thing. And then some are absentee and it's, what are we doing? Where is your parent? They're paying for this class. They should help you. So it does run the whole spectrum of participation, but we do have like a sort of training guide that my wife and I made. My wife is Korean, so she does the Korean language part, and I do the English language part. So we have like a sort of training video for our students. Like, okay, this is our Bryan's English Club digital etiquette. When you sign on, we followed, like Brain Pop made this really great back to school, like back to digital school video. And we sort of followed those cues where it's like, okay, go to a quiet place. If you have headphones, get your headphones ready. make sure you have your pen and paper ready. So we have that video, and that's pinned on our school chat.
Mhm.
So every time they go into our little homepage, is right there. And every time that we have class, if it's a virtual class, we resend a link. So it's sort of a routine now. Yeah, teacher, I got it. I don't have to watch that video anymore. But it's one of those things where I have those 5 rules, and it's only 5. And they kind of cover everything. So, it's like be respectful, be safe, be clean, listen, and then prepare. So everything under the sun falls in those 5 sort of phrases. So I can work, oh, okay, don't do that, or please do this within those guidelines. But I only have a few non-starters. It's like, okay, if your mom's vacuuming, you've got to stay on mute until that's over. Like, we can't have this huge background noise. But, if your little brother is next to you playing, it's your house. I'm not going to yell at you to go sit in the bathroom. If you have your pet there, it's not a battle that I'm going to choose. Some people try to fight all those battles, and when you fight enough battles, you lose.
Yeah.
So I try to keep the number of battles I fight very small. I try to be understanding that parents might not be there, but I also try to be understanding that parents are there. So in the beginning of the year, when I had parents who were sitting down next to students, it made me wonder, okay, what do I do in this situation? Because I've never dealt with that before.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're translating directly, which is sort of against the dogma of my school. It's a philosophical difference that I have, where I can't really say, Mom, shut up, please. This is detrimental to their understanding of the class. But in that way, I will often just send the reminders. Okay, in the classroom, we only use English. If we need a translation, there's a questionnaire. I have 2 main questions that go in right behind me. One is, how do I say da 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 in English? And then, how do I spell da da da? And I always can point, okay, don't ask in Korean, ask in English. So there's this very easy flashpoint to go to. Here, don't forget this question. Is it right here? Mom, I can always kind of gently guide parents as opposed to making it confrontational or uncomfortable, which is really how it feels to me. I want to say, get out. This is making your child uncomfortable. This is making them not want to participate. In a language class, there's a whole number of reasons why a parent isn't a good teacher of a second language, especially when the kid is grouped with people outside of their family. Just raises a whole number of emotional and psychological issues that kids don't want to deal with. But it's the reality. They're there, and there's not much I can do to get them gone, except for gently train parents to have good digital etiquette too. Okay, you're going to be here as part of our team. Okay, what do I do? How do I make you a better part of our team? Because some teachers will get upset at that and say, Mom, can you please leave? And for me, I just feel like that's an unnecessary confrontation. I'm non-confrontational in things that are not worthy of confrontation. And if I have a parent who's happy to be there, I will have them, okay, Mom, if your son is showing a lack of comprehension, please write down the time of the video, or write down the time of the day, because I have the running clock, and then just send me a note after, and then we'll be able to discuss it. Or if you have a question about it, please type it into the chat, and I'll get to the answer after, and I can give you a follow-up video later, or I can send you material. It's sort of like fencing. I have to parry and I have to strike, and there's this very delicate balance of it. But they're a good ally. If a parent is there, I try to use them as much as possible. I might even fold them into the class.
I'm sure that the parents and well, I'm sure the parents really appreciate your approach there and just being gentle and trying to bring them, to turn them into assets, like.
Yeah, because their behavior is genuine. They're not there to like spy on the class, which most teachers feel. They feel like attacked. Why are you watching my class? This is so uncomfortable. Why? Every class you teach should be good enough to be viewed by other people. That's sort of my philosophy. If you haven't prepared well enough, shame on you. Like, you're a teacher. This is my job, is to prepare professional lessons that a parent could come and sit in on any time. Once I approached my classes like that, I never felt like parents were a detriment. It might have been uncomfortable for me, like, oh, maybe today my lesson wasn't that great, but it's always has, a high enough standard to engage and encourage parent participation. So yeah, I feel like sometimes that's a way teachers feel like attacked or uncomfortable, or like they're being unnecessarily critiqued, or like extra oversight. But for me, it's a welcome addition. Like, hey, come on, the more the merrier. I always felt like that because I think my classes are good enough. I'm sort of proud of my class because I was very ashamed of my first classes, and over time I got better to the point that I would be happy to have parents in my class. But I do recognize that some teachers feel confrontational about that. So I try to be non-confrontational.
Well, it's cool too. You have a kind of craftsman attitude towards, like, it seems like you're thinking about improving it, and how to make it work, which I'm sure you're proud of it. I guess you'd be rightly proud of.
Certainly. And I think that the time that I invest beforehand makes the classes worthy of showcasing. I feel like I said, it goes back to the planning of not just the lesson, but the teacher talk. So, sometimes the parents who are sitting in on a second language class, something maybe they don't have any background knowledge in, or a science class back home, or a history class, or social studies, or math, that maybe have zero knowledge of. Maybe that is a wake-up call for a teacher to say, oh, if that person isn't understanding it, maybe my students aren't either. So I always think about it that way. If a total newcomer came and sat into this class, I feel like they should be able to participate. That's sort of the mindset I have when I'm planning. How do I make it so even a total beginner could come in and be part of this?
That's really interesting. I guess that speaks to the way your visuals need to be super clear and go kind of from the beginning, even, like, yeah. I have probably 4 more questions I'm dying to ask you, but I also know that we're getting close to time.
No problem. I'm enjoying myself. So if you're okay to keep going, I'm fine.
Okay, yeah, then let's keep going for another minute. I think one, you've definitely given me a bunch of detail on this, but I'd love to get even deeper, which is just like what it looks like when it goes bad and what it looks like when it's going well. And I think specifically, like, let's start with bad. If you think back to that first month, and maybe I'd love to walk through like a particular example where you're like, this was going bad and I need to fix it. Like, what did that look like from your point of view?
That's a really good question. So I have, like I said, students who are, first and second grade. So that first March was supposed to be their first time going to the public elementary school too.
Mm-hmm.
So not only was it their first time in an English class, it was their first time in a real classroom. Maybe they went to kindergarten, pre-K, had an art class or something like that, but they're going in with no real understanding of how to behave in a classroom. And I'm not their homeroom teacher, so I have to figure out, how do I explain virtually proper classroom etiquette in English to this group that I've never really met in person, right? So you and I, we have these sort of manners and these understandings of what is proper and what is not, because we're adults, right? Like we've done this many times before, but for a lot of the students, it was their very first time. So instead of thinking about the way I would in a normal physical classroom, like I go through the classroom mechanics. My first month of classes in the public school where I was in a physical setting is going through classroom mechanics, which is, you know, stand up, sit down, push in your chair, open your book, get a pencil ready. It's all this sort of classroom language that's necessary to interact in English. So there's no ABCs, there's no what's your name, there's no how are you, because they can't function in a classroom until we have this mutual understanding of what's acceptable behavior, how we do things, the step-by-step nature of my class, right? So it goes from a normal teacher would say, all right, please open your books to page 27, right? And in a mainstream class, that's fine because students can hear, open your book, open to page 27. They'll know what to do. But in my class, when I'm teaching 30 students, that command happens at a very different pace for each student. And open your book means a very different thing to every one of them, right?
Yeah.
Some means like open your backpack, take your book out, slam it on the desk, you know, open your book really loudly, you know, rip the pages out, whatever it is, it means different things to different students. So I really have to articulate clearly what I mean. So I don't need to like explain so thoroughly to you, but I'll give you just this one example. For when we're practicing stand up and sit down, right? When I say sit down to you, you know, it means like sit down, put your feet under the desk, put your hands on the desk, be quiet, right? There's like an implicit, all right, sit down, which is more casual. And then, hey, sit down now, right? That is all communicated very clearly to us. But for them, sit down. I'm sitting down, you know, like it's a very clear instruction, but it's not clear in the same way. And especially in a virtual setting, you're sitting down in a beanbag chair, you're sitting on your bed, you're sitting on the floor, you're sitting on the toilet, you're getting all of these different places and different positions and points of instruction that you wouldn't get in a desk and chair in my public school. So when I go to the public school, I teach them stand up, and then I teach them push in your chair, right? And then of course, everybody does it at their own pace. And I said, no, okay, everyone sit down. Let's try it again. We stand up and we put our 2 feet together, put our hands at our side. We slowly push the chair in, right? And we say, okay, now we sit down. And what do? They all pull it out fast and they slam down. So, all right, that's not how we do it. Let's stand up, push in your chair again. Slowly pull out your chair, put your bottom on the seat, put your legs under the desk, put your feet on the floor, cross your hands on your stomach. All right. Now, even in first grade, they should know how to sit down in a chair, but it means different things to different people. Now, once I've taught that in my class, they all know it. They know how to sit down in a chair. They know what my expectation of sit down is. So now I never have to teach that again. You know, I'll practice it for the first like 2 weeks, but now they know what it is. In the virtual setting, I didn't go through all of those steps. I just said, okay, everybody, Bryan teacher gave your mom and dad this worksheet. Do you have this paper? Get this paper ready, okay?
Interesting, yeah.
And I totally forgot. Nope. This is a paper. This is page 1. This is page 2. This is Bryan's paper. Do you have a paper? Yes. You don't have a paper. Jamin, where is your paper? Show me your paper. Paper up. Okay, paper down. Paper up. 2 hands up, right? Like it's these very basic things, but once I show that it's 2 hands, turn the paper so I can see in your camera, right? But I didn't think about it that way. I thought, get your paper, get your pencil. So I had half who were ready, half whose parents were saying, no, no, not that paper, the wrong paper. Or it was the right paper, or it was the wrong paper. And I wasn't super clear. So I said, all right, I failed miserably right off the bat. You know, I did my hello and I watched my introductory video. And then the first thing I wanted to do was have our paper. So we had a common frame of reference, right? And I thought that will take 30 seconds because I wasn't thinking. I forgot that just because they're in their house doesn't mean they don't need crystal clear instruction.
Mm-hmm.
They need to know I'm a new teacher to them. I'm a new person. We don't have any established rapport, any expectation of what something means. So I didn't explain very clearly what this means to me. And, you know, teachers who have, like I said, I teach all the way to the 6th grade. When I meet like a new 6th grader, someone might move to our school and it's their first day of class with me. You're in 6th grade. You know how to walk in the hallway, right? No. You know how to walk in the hallway when your homeroom teacher was watching you. Right?
Yeah.
Now you're with me and you think you're going to walk in the hallway however you want, which is very reasonable expectation for a 6th grader. You think, oh, you're 6th grade, you'll walk in the hallway nicely. It's like, no, no, no. Let me make sure that they know how to walk in the hallway the way I want them to.
Yeah.
And I feel like I missed that the first 2 classes. I tried it with the younger kids, failed. Then I tried it with the older kids, also failed. And I said, okay, I'm not doing this anymore because the classes were me saying, all right, get the paper ready. And then, okay, let's do number 1. Maybe it's a listening comprehension. They have a paper like this. You can see there's like a little white box.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll describe the picture. Okay, he is a boy. Write the number 1 in the box. Teacher, what's number 1?
Yeah.
Or teacher, what paper? Oh, teacher, I don't have a pencil.
Yeah.
What did I do? What did I get myself into? Right away, like first class, first 3 minutes, I recognized that I failed.
Yeah.
And so obviously I was really stressed out in that first class as a bad impression. But it was all my fault. You know, I could have blamed the students. Young Bryan, 10 years ago, I would have blamed the students. The parents didn't get them ready. They're bad students. Don't they know how to get a pencil? Like, I would have blamed them when really it was my fault.
Yeah.
You know, like it's very clear now to me when I think about it. Oh, Bryan, well, that was a stinker. What were you doing?
Yeah.
I just didn't prepare virtually the same way I would have in a physical classroom. And that's a thing that most people, I think, fall into the trap of, that virtual teaching is somehow different. Kids are going to behave differently. It's like, no, kids are going to behave exactly how you tell them to behave.
Yeah.
You know, like not, you ask them and you show them, but you know what I mean by tell them. They're going to give you what you allow. They're going to give you what you mirror for them. So for me, I didn't mirror preparedness. I didn't mirror simple instruction. I didn't mirror scaffolded breakdowns of what I needed them to do. So I got chaos. You know, I got a couple kids who followed along, but those kids are not the ones who need my help. You know, they're the ones I could say, all right, your homework tonight is 87 pages in the book. And they're going to say, okay, teacher, no problem. And tomorrow it will be done.
Yeah.
The kids that really need our coaching and mentoring and teaching are the ones who require that simplified instruction and sort of technical breakdown of get your pencil ready. This is the paper that you need. Show me that you're ready. So that time where students didn't have a paper, didn't have a pencil, weren't sitting correctly, you know, the screens up or down, I immediately realized that, okay, we never had a class like this before. They've never had me as their teacher. And even if they did, even if this is like our, you know, 10th year together, they still deserve my best effort to make sure that there's no ambiguity. There's nothing that gets lost in new language. new content or new platform. So I should try to think about how that can get from A to B as clearly as possible, right? For a lot of teachers now, there might be trying to do activities that are in like maybe their curriculum or their textbook that would be hard to do in a classroom.
Mm-hmm.
That would be almost impossible in a virtual setting, but they still like shoehorn it in because it's there. You know, they don't think.
Example that would fit
Um,
that category.
Sure, like for me, when I go into a classroom setting, we might do, it's a language class. So we do what's like a PPP lesson plan where it's presentation, I'm talking to them, practice, maybe it's in a small group, like a partner talk, like a dialogue. And then maybe we do production, which is a role play. Maybe there's like a group of 4 people talking. So maybe a new teacher might say, all right, I'm going to put you into breakout rooms and you're going to try the role play together, and we'll come back to the whole class and we'll do the role plays. So in a regular classroom, that is very hard to manage, right? To supervise, to give feedback, to make sure students are on task, to make sure that things are going well and correctly, make sure everybody followed the instruction. But when you're having to pop in from breakout room to breakout room, by the time you finish re-instructing the first breakout room, the 4th one, they've been lost for 10 minutes now. Because you know, it takes you that time to cycle around to everybody. So they've been sitting in that group. They didn't know what to do in the first minute. So the rest of the 9 minutes were spent doing whatever they wanted. You know, surfing the web or like talking about sports or gossiping, whatever the kids are going to do in a breakout room. So something like that where all right, it's a risk worth taking in a classroom because you might get the reward. But in this virtual setting, it's like, oh, no. I'm not gonna push something that is has a higher likelihood of failure than success just because it's what a lesson plan calls for, or just because that's what I feel obligated to do as a language teacher. It's like, no, if I have mature students who can follow, maybe you could get to a role play with enough practice. It's like, let's say we wanted to do a role play, right? You can't do it in one class. It's too hard. The first class, all right, guys, I'm going to teach you how to go into a breakout room. And, that's all we're going to do for 10 minutes. I'm going to send you to a breakout room. You say hi. I'm going to bring you back from the breakout room. And I'm going to send you to a new one, and you're going to meet new people, and I'm going to bring you back. And it's just this mechanics of getting into a breakout room. All right, then the next class, you review the breakout room and add in the next step. And maybe that is posting like a screen share of the role play script. And then that's all you do. You go to the breakout room, share the screen. Come back, get to a new breakout room, share the screen. And you do that for the second class. And then the third class, you go in and you read 1 line each, come back out, go to a new one, read 1 line each, come back, go to a new one. So it has to be built on a long continuum of practice. It can't be, all right, we're going to do a role play. You guys, we have done role play before. You know what it is. Yeah, but we don't know what to do. We don't know what the breakout room is. We don't know how to share screens. And you can't assume as the teacher that they're going to know. So if you've taught them, okay, great, maybe you could do role play. But to just assume that, all right, we're going to do presentation, dialogue practice, let's get into group role play. But a lot of people will do that because that's sort of what the lesson plan calls for. And then they'll wonder why it fails. It's like, the lesson plan didn't fail. You failed because you didn't thoroughly prepare your students for all of the mechanics that go into it. I keep saying that word because I think it's really important. The movements and the different mechanisms, like A inducts B, which, you know, pushes C. It's sort of like that Rube Goldberg device where all of these things have to line up perfectly. So, all right, you stack the dominoes and you try that like 10 times before you go into the mousetrap. And then you try those two in concert before you go to the next step. You know, I do that in a physical classroom, but I also do it in a virtual classroom. Because I tried to do a big group one where we were doing just sort of Q&A about a shared screen picture. So the first time I did, I had 17 students altogether. And I was asking, okay, what color is Moby? And then you hear orange, 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 orange. It was just this big garble of like orange goop. And I said, oh man, okay. In the class, there was not much I could do about changing that activity. You know, it was only like a 3-minute warm up. But I said, ooh, right away, I knew it was the wrong way to do it.
Yeah.
All right, I let that course, that little 3-minute activity, run its course, and then I just moved on from it. But the next class, I reiterated. You know, I had the screen up and I called out individual students. And it would be, okay, one by one. Jihu, what color is Moby? Orange. Then I'd call maybe 2 students. All right, Jinyoung, Nagyang, what color is Ben's shirt? And then they could both respond. But I had to do that with proper training. So it was like, okay, I'm going to ask Jihu a question, not Jinyoung, not Nagyang. Nagyang, you be quiet. Jinyoung, you be quiet. Jihu, you can talk. You be quiet. You can talk. You be quiet. It was like this real, very intensive instruction, because if I just say, okay, Jihu, I have a question only for Jihu, I ask him, 3 other kids who weren't paying attention are going to answer. So it was, yeah, it seems weird. And then there's a little bit of levity to, you know, the back and forth, but it's necessary to say, like, this question is for Jihu, not for you, Benjamin. Benjamin, you be quiet, okay? Don't answer. You got it? Got it. Okay, Jihu. Benjamin, be quiet, you know? Like, it's that sort of back and forth, but it was necessary for me to go back and reflect on the failure, to think, all right, why was everybody shouting? I just asked Jihu. Don't they know he's Jihu? You know you're not Jihu, you're Benjamin. Why are you answering? I didn't tell him super clearly. Everybody else be quiet. And that even takes time to fold into my teacher talk, because I'm not used to it. You know, in the classroom, I see everybody's face and I see their eagerness to answer. And I'm like, okay, they're like wild, like wolves. They're like chomping to get an answer. So I'm like, all right, guys, I see you. I know that you're there. You want to answer. Wait, this is his turn. You're next. Okay, Jihu's 1, Jinyoung's 2, Nagyang, you're 3. And I can really like identify and sort of placate.
Eye contact. And, yeah.
Exactly. But if I have a shared screen, it's really hard to sort of manage their attention and then manage their priming, because they're ready to answer. It's like, oh nope, okay, you gotta wait, cool it down. You're coming next though, you know, and that the body language that I can control a class with, it's very hard to communicate digitally. So that explicit mechanical instruction, you talk, you be quiet, you are number 2, you are number 3, sort of signaling with my actual language and then with my hands as much as possible. That sort of failure led to improved virtual classroom management.
That's super interesting. When it is going well and instructions you did them properly and the students are following along, what does great look like? When are the moments of joy for you that they are nailing it?
It looks as, you know, as much of a doppelganger to my regular classroom, you know, where I have whole class talk that captures students' attention, where I'm getting the eyes on the screen, but you can sort of tell when somebody's focused in on the screen and that they're actually paying attention. For me, having that initial buy-in, you can tell right away in the first like 2 minutes of class whether it's going to be a success or a failure. I think for me, most classes are won or lost in the initial whole class talk. So if I've got good whole class talk, I start off with a success, right? I have like a philosophy in my class, in my English club. It's the 3 C's. It's comprehension, competence, confidence, because one builds on the other. If I start off my whole class talk with comprehension, like they're understanding what to do, then when they go into practice, I can see that they're starting to put things together, whether that be a content or language or both. I can see that things are starting to click, right? When I put up the whole class instruction and it says, all right, step 1, look at the picture. Step 2, listen to Bryan teacher. Listen to like I have a transcript. Listen to what I dictate. Number 3, match the picture. And then number 4, say the number. So when I have that clear instruction and then I practice based off of the instruction, I might say, okay, Juhyuk, what is number 2? Step 2. Number 1 is listen. Number 2 is look. Number 2, listen to Bryan, teacher. They'll kind of complete my sentences for me. So it just shows that there's this focus and this engagement, and I can bring back Jinyoung. Number 4, who speaks, you or me? That's right. I don't speak, you speak. So if I have this ability to do not just the CCQ, comprehension check questions, but the ICQ, instructional check questions, that gives me this confidence that they got it. And then we can go into the work and like actually start producing language and using the new target vocabulary or focusing on a grammar point with a much more, like I said, confident class where they feel like, okay, I know what to do, I'm starting to get it, and now I want to participate. Because getting that positive repetition in the beginning of class, getting those simple question and answers to start participation flowing, just sort of naturally leads into whole class practice where people are willing to participate. So I don't know how it is in the States because I haven't sat in on many teachers' classes. I'm sort of a language specialist, but most teachers that I've observed don't do those comprehension or instruction check questions after they talk. They'll say, all right, students, today we're going to write a 5-sentence paragraph about butterflies. Okay, remember you have your introduction, you have 3 body sentences, and you have a conclusion sentence. All right, here's your paper. Here's the article that you can read about the butterflies. Let me know if you have any questions, right? It's sort of like this very mature instruction that leaves a lot of room for misinterpretation or, misunderstanding, and doesn't get any enthusiasm for the topic, right? Instead of saying, all right, well, we're going to write a paragraph. All right, how many sentences are in a paragraph? 5, right? It seems like it's very basic and elementary, and maybe some people would look at it as like, not childish, what's the right word for it? Like condescending almost, but it's not. There are some kids who might not remember that it's 5 sentences. They might think that it's like 3. I have this 1 to tell what I say, detail, restate, right? No, it's like just to reclarify. We're in this virtual setting. We have no anchor charts to look at. We have no real shared space except for that screen that we're all looking at. So it's like, why not restate the information? Why not recheck that everybody's followed along? Why not make sure that everybody is crystal clear on what they're supposed to do by asking those follow-up questions. And then you just get this nice back and forth. You know, you can direct it to the whole class, or you can direct it individually, and then you just get this energy to go into the activity with. So those like CCQ and ICQ, I think, are foundational to transitioning from whole class instruction into activity, because they're just getting this recap. You're sure that they heard it from you, they heard it from other students, and then if it's necessary, you can go and focus on those few students who need additional support. But if, you know, you said it clearly, you showed it clearly, you recapped it with other kids, like getting information back from students, you're going to have a much higher, like 80, 85% retention. Whereas if I'm just talking, I might get like 25%. But adding the visual, you know, really probably doubles that. And then having those follow-up questions probably adds another like 50% to that. So each additional step that you take from presentation to practice to reiterate what they're supposed to do just sets them up for success. Whereas just giving instruction and like asking them to go ahead and do it, you're going to get that quality of work. And the kids who need the most detailed instruction aren't going to get it, because they're not going to ask in a virtual setting, because they're on display for everybody to say. In a regular classroom, I can kind of see who's not working. In a virtual classroom, it's pretty easy to just put my head down.
Yeah.
Teacher, I'm working, you know. It's harder for me to read your face. Whereas, you know, in a classroom, I can move around, I can get in the green zone and say, like, all right, they're good to go. Oh, he's in the red zone now. Like, I gotta help this guy out. He's drowning over here.
Yeah.
I can sort of see it. The body language tells me, like the lack of movement of their pen tells me. I can much more easily troubleshoot in a physical setting, whereas in a virtual setting, it's not impossible, but it's hard. I mean, short of saying like, hey, hold up your paper or take a snapshot and share it in our, you know, our Google Classroom, or share it on Dojo, or send me, you know, with a text message, however you communicate with your students. There is not many other ways to ensure that work is going on. So for me, the best way to ensure that work begins is to make it so foolproof that to not do it would require insubordination. Just like, just not doing it. Like, no, I'm not doing it. I'm here, but that's all you're getting from me. Okay, I want my instructions to be so clear that like, that's the only way you're not doing it. Because and like that's what causes most problems for any teacher. It's the lack of comprehension. You know, kids who don't get it don't do it, and then the kids who it's too easy for, of course, they just breeze through and make a problem. But most of the kids are going to do most of the stuff most of the time if they know what to do.
You can also,
and if not,
if a teacher misinterprets that lack of clarity with insubordination, then you set up the confrontational kind of relationship.
Big time. And having that shared screen that you can go and point back to when somebody does get stuck, so you can ask them, okay, Benjamin, I see that, you know, you're not working now. Are you stuck? Can you show me what step are you on? Like, let's say it's a math problem. I saw this tools for teaching diagram about a long division problem. And they have each step labeled, like number 1 is divide the first number, and then they stop it and copy the problem, and then they put a whole nother box for the next step. And it's just each step is in a numbered and labeled box with like the name of the step, the number of the step, and only one operation. It doesn't do the whole, you know, like when we were kids, I imagine you had the same experience. The teacher just did the whole example on the board. And it's like, all right, if you need help, look at my example on the board. If I need help, that doesn't help me. Right. I need to know where I went wrong. So if I can say, all right, Benjamin, you're here. Look at the shared screen. What number do you think you're at? And then you could probably more closely associate, like, okay, teacher, I'm on step 6 and I don't know what to do with this remainder. Or if it's in an English class, I don't know how to restate my introduction. Can you help me? And you could privately chat, or you could say, all right, guys, let's everybody put our pencils down. Benjamin had a really great question, and it turns your challenge into an opportunity to reteach that part that somebody had trouble with. Benjamin told me that he wants to make his topic sentence and his conclusion sentence match, but he wants his conclusion to have more, pow. He wants to really capture his reader at the end. So who's got a suggestion for him? You can kind of open it back up. When we restate, that means we say the same thing, but what? We got to change it a little, right? So who can do that? And you might open it up to people who have the same question, but were hiding for the work, just pretending that they were still going. So having a place to redirect sort of everybody to, all right, if one person is stuck on step 6, somebody else is probably stuck on step 6 too. So let's go back to step 6 and figure out what went wrong. And that would, that visual instruction plan plays such an important role, because everybody looks at the same thing and they see it clearly. And step 6 is to rewrite your topic sentence. All right, let's go through it together. It's almost like guaranteed that in a class that's big enough, if you have a 25-person class, one person has a question, 2 people have it. And if 2 people do, that's enough for me to stop the class and re-explain things again and make sure that I wasn't the one who was unclear. 2 may have not been paying attention, but if it gets to more than that, it's like, okay, there was something wrong that got lost in my teaching that we should go back and check.
This is so fascinating. I have 2 more questions for you if you have time to indulge me.
Yeah, sure, no problem. I'm happy to keep going.
The one is just about the class size differential and just like kind of the economics of it, like how to make it work. I'm sure most teachers, you prefer smaller class sizes, but also like you need students' tuition to pay the bill. So when you think about the club and having the 6 per class, is that kind of the sweet spot for you, where it's a size of class that's great and you can afford to live on the salary you might make from that? Or do you need a little more, or are you thinking about that kind of thing much? I mean,
well,
I imagine.
To be honest, I thought I would like smaller classes better, but they're, like most things, they're a dichotomy. It's a double-edged sword, in that if you get 6 good students, man, it's like heaven on earth. I mean, you have kids who want to participate and who are talkative and have outgoing personalities. 6 is great. But there's something to be said about the energy that a big classroom brings in getting things rolling. If you get a class of like 4 kids, you would think like, this is perfect. There's no hiding in a class of 4. There's hiding in eyes down and like low talking and like kind of being uncomfortable. So there's nowhere to hide in a class. Yeah, there's nowhere to hide in a class of 4. In a big class, you might have 25 students. So there's always going to be some group of 3 or 4 students who are actively participating in that time, or who had a good breakfast, who heard a good joke before class, who are just bringing kind of levity and excitement and the ability to go back and forth with you. Whereas in a small class, it can be intimidating for a lot of students to be on the spot, because they know they're going to be called on. In a virtual setting, they're there, we're all looking at each other, and there's not an opportunity to not answer a question. In a big class, over time, I figured out that, okay, if I go to student A with a question that they should know but don't, I can ping pong over to the partner sitting next to them. All right, Jin Young doesn't know, but Nagyang, can you help Jin Young? You can? Okay, then let's go over to Ji Hyuk. Ji Hyuk, I know you got this one. and then he can go here and I can come back and recycle it to that student. I could repurpose the question, I could rephrase it, I could ask it again in a different way. But in a group of 4, it becomes almost not embarrassing, but it can become frustrating for that student who's on the spot. And that requires a very delicate management of their emotions with, not forced participation, but encouraging participation. Because like in the club, that's what they're here for. Like it's more for a conversation. So if they're not participating, it's hard to get the energy up to encourage that person to participate. Whereas in a big class, we have a good flow going. People sort of see someone jump in the pool and the water's warm. Hey, come on in. Like it becomes this sort of atmosphere that's exciting, even though we're just talking like, how are you? What's your name? How old are you? It's these very basic interactions, but there's excitement to it because there's competence. Hey, I can do it. Now it becomes a little more fun because I know what's going on and I want to participate. Whereas in a group of 4, sometimes that critical momentum, that takes to get the ball rolling, it's a lot harder to produce. It's more kinetic energy on my part, so I got to really push them to get going. So I would say that's probably the biggest difference, is that big classes, I can get them started like a brand new car. Sometimes the smaller classes are like that, 25-year-old pull start lawnmower that's been in the shed since, the end of the fall. And now you're in spring trying to get it restarted. So that can be really energy intensive for teachers. So I think one thing that I try to do is obviously every teacher should start class with a review of something, but I like to also start things that are not as intensive on students. So I base my language school on Brain Pop ELL, which is the program that I use for school. So there's a video-based program. So we always start off with that video and we do pause points. So we watch the video, pause, talk about it. So as we're watching the video, they're hearing the information, pause, what's his name? And keep going. So we're getting this positive repetitions, good answers and positive answers and complete sentences. Like we're getting momentum built based on stuff that they already know, based on review, so that there's this feeling of comfort that, oh, okay, yeah, right. I know Bryan teacher's going to take care of me. Like I know he's not going to embarrass me in front of the other students. I know that the work that we do as a whole class, we call it like a Z+1. It's what they know, and I'm only going very little, a very tiny bit in the whole group setting of where they should be. So it's like a very comfortable. If you don't know this, okay, that's why we're practicing like this very simplified level, because I want to start every class out with a really, I don't know, I don't want to feel like it's like a positive energy, like, yay, we're having fun, because it's not edutainment, but I wanted to start out with comfort. Like, hey, I can do this. I'm not swimming in the deep end with a rock tied to my leg. Because I've been in language classes like that where the teacher's feeling of our ability was like a lot higher than we actually were. And I've never felt that bad in my whole life.
Oh yeah.
Like that's like, in terms of academically speaking, that's the worst I've ever felt, was being in that language class. And it was like, man, I was a teacher at the time. This was like when I first got to Korea. So I immediately had this second language sensitivity to my students in the classroom. And I was like, oh boy, I have to reevaluate how I do everything. Because if my students feel like I do right now, I don't ever want them to feel that way again.
Yeah, yeah.
Because part of like language competency and language fluency and accuracy is a willingness to experiment. But you can only experiment with things that you're familiar with. You know, you can't like start mixing acids and bases if you don't know what a beaker is, or, you know, an eyedropper. You have to have these foundational things. That's the beginning of my class. And then we just slowly build it up.
Yeah.
You know, I think back to a math class. I always like to compare English to math because they're very formulaic, and this is very foundational skill set that is required to move up to the next step. But a lot of teachers, math teachers, English teachers, whoever, just go on the timeline. They don't go on the mastery timeline. So that is like, brings us back sort of to the first thing that we were talking about, that teachers in this virtual setting have to manage their time expectations more, is it frugally, more realistically. They have to feel that, okay, I quit math 10th grade. I had to go back in university. It was a requisite for graduation. I don't remember what it was, calculus or pre-calculus. That was heavy lifting because I had a teacher in 7th grade who failed me. Now I passed the class, I got like a B- or a C+, but that teacher failed me. Before that, I was a competent student in math. I always had B+, A-, A, you know, I was really good in math. And then I got to this part of the language that I couldn't understand.
Yeah.
And they didn't stop and like teach me to mastery. It just pushed us all along. Then I got to 8th grade, didn't understand it. 9th grade, didn't understand it. You know, I could work hard and just master the formula, but that's like doing a direct translation of the language. You're not actually comprehending what's going on. You're just remembering these. It's a rote memorization. So the same goes for every teacher of, whether it be a foreign language or a core subject back in the States. They have to ask themselves, what is more important to me? Student mastery of the topic, or compliance with this district standard?
Yep.
For me, that's why I quit. I quit like my other old job, as I didn't want to do that anymore. I just couldn't do it. Now, not everybody has the opportunity to go and like open their own school, but I just said to myself, like, what's the point of doing this? Like, what am I doing with my life if I'm not teaching them to like actually do something with this? And I think that might be what a lot of teachers feel the stress of the situation is that they're not really feeling a sense of accomplishment with their students. They're just feeling a sense of completion instead of a sense of accomplishment. And I think the students have got to be concerned that they're going to be losing a year of know-how. You know, not so much that they're going to become stupid. You know, the kids are adaptable. They'll figure out other things that they'll get better at. But when they go back to school in a in-person setting eventually, they're going to be expected to have learned this year's topics to progress into, you know, pre-calculus to calculus, or whatever comes at algebra or geometry, whatever comes next. But they're not going to have it. The mastery is not going to be there. And that we're setting up not a failure just for this year, but it's a failure for every subsequent year, and then a failure for students to feel like they can understand anything. I feel like I'm not good at math because I had one teacher who failed me for one semester. It's like, that put me on this totally different trajectory. Like, really, from all of middle school and high school, I wanted to go into engineering, right? I love technology, love building things, love the ideas, schematics. I liked all of the physical hands-on stuff, but everything got harder in terms of, you know, math and physics because I couldn't catch up. And I feel like a lot of teachers are going to be pushing students into the next year's teachers who are going to be saying, I could have been this. I should have been this. I was supposed to have been this. because they're not teaching to mastery now. They're just, and it's not the teacher's fault. Like you said, a lot of people are under pressure to do that. But I think sometimes teachers need to call each other out and say, hey, be accountable to yourself.
Yeah.
This is your life that you're giving over. Make sure that you're preparing a lesson that will lead to mastery. Even if you have to go through the book fast, make sure that your lesson planning is done that way. Because it can happen, but it takes a lot of legwork on our part as teachers. So one thing that like Dojo can do, or like any company that people are using, whether Google Meets or Zoom or whoever, is to make things simple to start with, so that the explanation is easy and that people can start like working with it right away. So whether that be sharing things on Class Story or School Story, or messaging privately to students, or putting in students' portfolios, is having those like, 8-minute videos, 4-minute videos, 2-minute videos about what's going to happen next. Having that PDF worksheet that prepares students for the next class, or that gives the opportunity for follow-up work that might not be connected to the curriculum, but it's necessary to understand the topic. I think that the cool part for me, like what I like to share on ClassDojo, is all of the supplements that we can't get to in class. Because I like to think of my language lab as like a basketball practice. I don't want my students to come, you wouldn't want to go to a basketball team and watch the NBA, right? You want to get out on the floor and practice. You want to shoot ball, you want to pass it around, you want to score, you want to play defense, you want to practice some skill sets. So if my students come to me, we're not just reading a book. That's the thing that they can do at home. Even in a virtual setting, I like to make it as interactive as possible, because that's the only chance they come together to do this work. But they can't do that work well unless they have some opportunity to practice it at home. So I can show you some examples after we finish of what my virtual classrooms look like, because I have some of the Zoom videos saved.
I would love to see that, actually. That'd be so fascinating.
It would be cool, because you can see how, like, my earlier videos are not that good and the later ones are better, but you could also see the steps that are taken beforehand. I can show you the messages that I send them the night before, and like the materials that I send the day before or the week before, to prepare them for the class. And that can just give you a sense of the type of preparation that would need to go into it, which brings me to one thing that I wanted to make sure I told you before we finish, is that one of the reasons that my online classes are really successful is that I don't reinvent the wheel. Like sometimes in our ClassDojo groups, because I'm part of the teacher and the mentor and the ambassador community, I see requests for like different features and different tools and different this and that. And I sometimes want to like tell the teachers, like, that is not what Dojo is for. Like, this is a toolbox that has been curated really well. Like, I don't want to say that it can't be improved, because you guys keep adding stuff and, like tinkering with things, which is perfect. But a toolbox is not something that you buy and keep the same forever. So some teachers think that, okay, I bought this toolbox, oh, but now I'm going to buy this other tool and this other tool, which are activities, right? Some teachers think more activities equals more excitement and more fun and more student engagement. And it's like, no. In a virtual setting, you've got to go to the old faithful, your hammer, your wrench, screwdriver, and that's it. So many people, they're like, oh, I'm going to teach them this and that, and we're going to try this activity. It's like, every new tool that you put in your box makes it heavier, makes it less manageable, makes it more unbalanced, right? And you are much less familiar with how to use it, right? If you want to be a good, like a framer, right? You want to put frames up in a house. You have a framing hammer. and you got like a nail pouch, and you are an expert. If you've ever seen somebody, they can spin it, they throw it behind their head, you know, throw the nail up and they can hit it. They know how to use those tools really well.
Yeah.
What they don't use is they don't use a sledgehammer to do it. And they don't use one of those like jewelry, little tiny jewelry hammers, a ball peen hammer to do that. It's not the right tool for the right job.
Yeah.
So a lot of teachers try to use tons of different tools with varying degrees of success, but mostly it's not successful because there's no consistency to the activity, right? I said I have this sort of lesson plan style that I go through, but I also have the greeting that's the same. I have classroom instruction that's the same, but my activities are limited. In the virtual class, I've got like 6 to 8 activities, and we recycle. And one of the reasons that the instructions are always the same. The language changes, the content changes. I might add some little novelties to it, right? Some bells and whistles, but the framework of the activity is always the same because I know they're going to get it. And so what? Maybe it's a little boring. It's an online class. Like, what can I do? I can get them to do it correctly. You know, I would always sacrifice a little bit of the wow factor in a virtual setting for understanding, because then they're going to do it. Like, they could be nice and it could be pretty to look at, like, you know, PowerPoint with transitions and, you know, bells and fireworks going off. Like, that's great to look at. But if the activity is not super easy to understand, nobody cares. They're going to pay attention to the bells and whistles. And when that's over, teacher, I don't really get this. But if we do, all right, we did this on Tuesday, we're doing it again on Thursday with different partners. This time, instead of it being a listening activity, you're going to dictate to each other. Oh, okay. I know how the activity works now. I added a little novelty in changing the dynamic from teacher-led to student-led, and that's it. And then the next class Tuesday, you do it again with new partners. Teacher again? Yes, again, until master. You know, that's it. And then the competence has a novelty all its own. You know, kids feel good when they can do it.
I love that. I love that quote. This is perfect segue into the kind of final question I had for you, which is just if you had anything that you'd like for ClassDojo to do to make your life better, to make other teachers' lives better, that could include taking stuff away. You're like, hey, this is
too much.
Simplify some things. But yeah, I would love to hear any advice, from profound things to just little nitty gritty things that bother you and you'd like to see better.
I guess this is like maybe 5 or 6 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, 5, 6, it was a long time ago now. I wrote a blog post for ClassDojo somewhere in the archives, and it was about visual instruction plans. And we used an example that I had put on my whiteboard in my classroom. And I always wished that I could build my visual instructions in the ClassDojo app or in the ClassDojo platform online with some icons. Now, obviously, like there's limitations and copyrights and, you know, fair usage and whatnot. So when I build mine, I have like an educational account to, you know, Noun Project.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, they're just a group that makes visual icons.
Okay,
so, like,
cool.
you know, the handicapped wheelchair icon.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, or the men and women's bathroom sign.
Yeah.
It's like that, but for everything.
Oh, cool.
Everything you can think of, they have an icon for it. Then there's another one called Flat Icon. That's just a colorized version of Noun Project. But I use those to make all my visual instruction plans because for me, building those, it's sort of hard to do on the fly. I'd love to see, like, you know, Dojo has the instructions where you can type it out, but that's very limiting for somebody like me, who's, you know, a second language teacher, or somebody who just wants to add make things a little less text heavy. Right. I think having some like icons, some very basic but universal icons, like, open the book, get your pencils ready, read, speak, having those sort of drag and drop icons for the sort of notepad feature that we have. Let me see exactly what it's called. I just always call it the notepad. So when I open my dojo, hold on. When I open my launch pad, just one moment, I'm logging in. I'm on my laptop. It's not what I usually use. Just one moment. Okay, in my directions, yeah. In the directions, you can add the activity name, you can add an item, but it's only text-based. So I can just type something up.
Mm-hmm.
So if I had like the option in the toolkit, just to add a, or I guess in the think, pair, share too, that would be pretty cool. Just the sort of turn and talk icon, a think and write icon, those sort of icons would be really helpful to help students quickly be able to independently look up and check what am I supposed to be doing. One thing about a text-heavy instruction is that a lot of students might not understand that instruction in the first place. But if there's a visual icon, it might give them the confidence to go back and try on their own before they raise their hand, like the helpless hand raiser, oh,
Yeah.
teacher, I don't get it. They might have a little bit more enthusiasm to try it. Like, oh, okay, I know that word. I know what I'm supposed to do. Okay. Now, that's very limiting because I'm an ESL teacher, but I think it could be just a nice visual too for people to kind of spice up the instruction.
I'm trying to capture this here, just to make sure I understand what you're saying with the visual myself. So,
Okay, yeah, sure.
you're talking about, and what you would really like to see is the ability to, I'll put it over here, you probably wouldn't want it right here, but some sort of,
yeah, like a little kind of drop down box that has the basic read, write, do the math, something like that.
Yeah, like if you could do stuff like this.
Yes, that would have like a nice uniform look to it. Nice, what's the right word? Like a dojo-fied type of icon.
Yeah.
Because I know that we have like tons of avatars and tons. ClassDojo is really like open with sharing the imagery. So like, I've been able to make a bunch of cool visual instruction plans using Mojo and Bruce and Katie in a way that students connect with. I mean, like I said, I use Brain Pop and I add those characters. Moby is their main character. I add him to like everything. And that just little connection point. Anybody who uses ClassDojo, their students already love Mojo. So anytime that I could like add in Mojo doing the turn and talk to Katie, or Mojo writing something, or Mojo having this big idea, that just gets students, that's the novelty. Just the little character is enough sometimes.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be really cool. I would really enjoy that.
People love that. I mean, like as in kids love the Mojo. I mean, I love it too. My son's like 2.5. He has Mojo.
Oh man, I got the little, I got 2 of the plushies because I have 2 kids. I did some events that who's Jenna, like years ago, she sent me kind of prototypes. Oh man, those kids still sleep with them years later. Can I tell you? My first son, he's always telling me, he calls me Poppy, when am I gonna grow up and be able to wear your Mojo shirt? Because I got like the old Mentor shirt from 2013, and he's like, that's so cool. I want that. Yeah.
I love
tell him, just hang on, man. You'll be a big boy soon. You'll have that Mojo shirt in your rotation.
That's so charming and delightful. Okay, so I think this roughly captures what you're trying to
Yeah,
get.
certainly.
Imagine
Most certainly.
those icons could go not just in directions, but potentially in messages or stories. There's a lot of places where, just in general, wherever you could put text, it'd be nice to be able to put a kind of strong icon set.
Sure, and a lot of the icons, I think you guys already have pooled as resources, because most of the ones that I would think useful are in the skills icons already.
Oh yeah.
So that would be a good thing to say. Like, it wouldn't require a lot of like support time from a graphic designer, or like any logistics from the visual arts team, because like a lot of the stuff's already there.
Yeah.
I know sometimes that for us, like a teacher, I think, oh, that's going to be so easy to do, right? It's just a couple minutes for a designer. It's like, no, 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 no. That takes a very long time, and it's, labor intensive, and you got to check with people that it's, within the like dojo theme.
Yeah.
So if it's already like pre-existing, pre-approved, like it's already a resource that's available, it might be a sort of a quick turnaround as compared to something that has to be completely built. So that would be something to think about too.
Yeah, I love that. I love that project, and yeah, I'll share it out.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, thank you so much for taking the time and kind of share. It's just so insightful, and it's delightful to talk to you, because you're, like I said, you're a craftsman, and you keep thinking about how to improve your craft, and much to the benefit of your students, I'm sure, and also yourself. It sounds like just having peace of mind that you're doing good work, and that is
Definitely.
really awesome. So it's
I appreciate
a
that.
pleasure to
Thank
talk to you about it.
Man, it was pleasure was mine. Like I said, I live over here, and these sort of professional conversations are few and far between. So I know that I was like this water flow of maybe sometimes mixed up garble, but I hope I did my best to kind of communicate what I do and why I do it. Because if any insight you're able to garner is that, for me, somebody told me a long time ago, you can have better students because you can become a better teacher. And some people feel like, all right, this virtual thing is not for me, or like, I can't do it, or it's not my style. And you can get better at it if you just go back and think about what went wrong, and then how you can fix it. So I think something that could be cool, I don't know who does the engagement in the communities, whether that's like might be you who poses a question, or Caitlin, or somebody, might be like a cool question to ask, like, all right, what's a failure, like the biggest failure you had and the remedy that fixed it, like a miracle cure.
That's a great
Who's
question.
the snake oil salesman here?
Yeah.
But like that would be a fun question, because I think people would share a lot of good hacks or tips or tricks that, share your best experience. Sometimes people are a little bit modest, or people are a little bit intimidated that, oh, maybe my best is not that interesting, but everybody loves to share like an overcome failure.
Yeah.
Like I said to you, like I failed like miserably. It was terrible. I hadn't had that failure in like 7 or 8 years. And to go back and sort of re-experience that as a teacher was affirming that, okay, just because it was easy in the physical classroom doesn't mean it's always going to be. And you got to keep working to get better at it.
Yeah.
But you can get better at it. Like, you had a failure, you fixed it. Like, other people can fix it too. Like, that would be very, very uplifting, I think, to a lot of people. And we might share that, hey, we're in the same boat. We all have the same problem. This is a cool way to go about approaching the fix, the remedy.
Well, I will definitely suggest that to Caitlin, and also I think she would be pleased if you ended up asking that question in the forums as well. So
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Got like the teacher-led conversation in there too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that a lot of people now, because we're so isolated in this virtual setting, we know that other teachers are going through it, but it's sort of like, you know, being a middle school student again. You know, other people are feeling it, but you're not sure. You know, nobody voiced something in a way that struck a chord with you. Nobody's like, oh, you have a Benjamin in your class too? Oh, I got one in my class. Let me tell you what, next year he's got a younger brother, he's coming too. You know, it's just this sort of connection point that makes us feel like we're not so like far adrift from one another. That would be really good.
Well, it's been a great pleasure for me we've been talking to a bunch of parents recently, and now we're kind of talking to a bunch of teachers, and it's just like, I don't know, it's for exactly that reason, it feels great, because it's like, okay, like I could see humanity, and especially when you go to ClassDojo users, they really run the spectrum of just like every type of person. So you kind of get this sense of like, okay, I'm really connecting in these Zoom calls with like people who are living, you know,
that's so cool.
Yeah, I really, really like it. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. So I hope that whatever does come of this conversation, that it was useful and it was worth your time, and that you can put some of this stuff to good use. Because
it was super useful, and also just inspiring that, I think we were wondering, what it takes to engage effectively online, and this is a very, I think it's a great explanation of what that takes, and you were the kind of the first teacher we've talked to about that, so I think
cool.
Strongly anchoring me too. So we'll talk to others too, but I think
it can happen.
Yeah,
you can have a good online class. That is has my Bryan Betts seal of approval.
That's what
somebody in this world has done it.
Yeah, especially with younger kids too. That's what probably is the most challenging part.
Yeah, I mean, I always tell people I teach English as a second language, but I don't speak the native language, you know, in the class. It's sort of like my my number one rule. Like I teach English in English.
Yeah.
So doing that, if you can teach a subject in a different language online, there's like no excuse for somebody else, you know? It's sort of like if you live in New York, right? You make it there, you make it anywhere. So it's like, all right, if I can do this with like my situation, you guys, you can do it. There's somebody out there doing something, and it's all a matter of properly planning, thinking about your teacher talk, doing a few things that you might not have done since, you know, you were in teachers college. And so it's like, it's worth it though. So it's definitely worth the time investment before class to have a really good time in class.
You had to reset, and I'm glad you did. I think it benefited everybody.
Always cool.
Have a good night. I know it's late over there. Get some sleep.
Yeah, sure. And if you need anything, some follow-ups or something wasn't clear, please feel free to reach out and message me again.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, and if you have a chance, I'll send you an email, but if you have a chance to send some of those resources, it'd be so fun to see those things. So
definitely. And I'll get you a copy of one of the activities I do with the visual instruction plan built in, so that you can kind of see what I mean by what I said. Always right, show, not tell.
Yeah, thank you, Bryan. And yeah, don't feel or reach out anytime. I'd love to chat about anything. So
you got it. All right, thanks a lot, Benjamin. Nice to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.